guys, it's Melanie, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a pincushion. I've got a couple of different ones. I'll show you some close-ups, and I've used a couple different methods. I'm going to show you all the different ways that I made these pincushions. The materials you're going to need for this are scraps. This is all scraps of fabric that I used for my pincushions. It's a great kind of scrap buster project. I'm going to show you how to do this kind of improv technique. Measuring, cutting, anything precise, just kind of grabbing what's in your scrap bin. I used some polyfill, like what you stuff in, pillows, and crushed walnut shells, which you can get at a pet store. It's actually like lizard liner, I'll show you a picture of that too. And at the end, I'll kind of talk a little bit about all these different methods and which one is my favorite, and kind of wrap it up. But let's just jump right into the tutorial. Okay, so here are my scrap bins. They're all organized by color, and I'm going to pick my blue bin because it's stuffed to the brim, and so I could really use to get rid of some of these scraps and use them up. It has some of my favorite fabrics of all time in this scrap bin. So here's one of the pincushions that I already made, and you can see you really just need a small amount of scraps. I'm going to pick this octopus fabric to be a main focal point, and then just dig around and find some other fabrics that I think will fit in nicely. Now I found this strip, and you can see right here I'm going to kind of find where that octopus is, and then make an angle, and then go ahead and just stitch it down using 1/4 inch seam allowance over on the sewing machine. No need to backstitch, so you can see kind of how that's coming together. Now I'm going to use a 4.5 inch square ruler that I have. That's how big my squares are going to be for the pincushions. So that ruler is really handy, but it's not essential. You can use any size ruler just to get it cut down to the proper size. Now here's a blue fabric I'm going to use. I'm going to play around with the angle and just find a fun way to add that in. Flip it over, and then I'm going to take that over to the machine and stitch that down as well. This is a really nice method because you don't have to do any precise cutting, and it's kind of a fun improv way. So now I've stitched that down. You can see how that's coming together. And then what I didn't show you on that first one is you need to trim the seam allowance. So anytime you're doing this, you're going to need to trim that seam allowance down so that you don't have so much bulk on the back of your fabric. So just trim that down and give it a nice good press before then you add some more fabric. So here I'm adding this kind of lime floral print. I'm going to be going across those two seams. Make sure you're using a 1/4 inch, but see, this is a really great way to use strips or random cuts of fabric, favorite pieces that you have in your scrap bin, and it's a fun way to incorporate those. So here I have it stitched down, and I'm going to trim that 1/4 inch seam allowance again here. Make sure that you're always giving it a nice good press in between all of these steps. That's going to ensure that you have a really nice finished look. And here I'm going to go ahead and add my last piece of scrap fabric to this other corner, just to frame out that octopus in a really fun way and make this really great pincushion. I've stitched it down. I'm going to trim the seam allowance just like on all the other steps. Same thing, you're going to get the hang of it. Trim this down to the 4.5 inch square and give it a nice good press again. And then when you are keeping in mind where to stitch this, see on this pincushion I've used some polyfill and the crushed walnut shells, and so you're going to keep that in mind when you are doing the stitching. See right here where I'm pointing to, I'm going to use that part to be my opening because I don't want there to be a seam right in the middle of that opening when I stitch it. So right sides together on two 4.5 inch squares, and then you're going to take it over to the sewing machine and stitch all the way around, kind of like you would a pillow. You're going to back stitch really well, pivot 90 degrees at the corners using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then you're going to make your way all the way around. Now when you get to the end, you are going to leave about a 1-inch space and back stitch again so that you have enough room to flip your pincushion right side out. There you go, all done with that. You can see the little opening right here. Now I'm going to show you how to clip the corners. Sometimes you guys have questions on this step. You want to clip the corners so that the points are pointy and you don't have the seam allowance getting in the way. So you're going to trim it right close to that seam, but you're not going to cut through the seam. That will create a hole. So then go ahead and flip your pincushion right side out once all those corners are trimmed. And then what you'll do is stick your finger inside the pincushion and pop those corners out right like this, so you can get a nice good point and it looks nice and professional and finished. And then give it a nice good press. You can see how it's coming together. Now with that opening that I made, I'm going to use a paper funnel that I made and fill this guy up with crushed walnut shells. It's a really common thing to use when you are filling up pincushions. I've heard it can help sharpen your pins and also help with rust and other things. It's a little less expensive than emery, and it's got a good weight to it. So what I did here was put my zipper foot on the machine so that I could get real close to the edge and machine stitch this pincushion closed. It's a little tricky. It'll take a little practice. I like to do it by machine rather than by hand, but you can't get the pincushion quite as full, which I will talk about at the end. Now here's how I would hand stitch it closed. I made a second pincushion, just two 4.5-inch squares, and I'm just going to whip stitch around using a hand quilting thread, so it's nice thick thread, a good weight and easy to use for hand stitching. So I'm just going to whip stitch and go around. You can use a ladder stitch if you are particular about the finished look so that you don't have the stitch showing as much. It doesn't really bother me that much and you don't end up really noticing it, or I don't. But if you were going to sell these or gift them and you really wanted that stitch to be nice and hidden, you could try a ladder stitch. So you're just going to stitch this opening closed. This is an additional way to do it. You could do it by machine or you could do it by hand. And then to finish it off, you're going to tie a knot in the thread. This is the same way you would maybe finish off binding on a quilt. Get that knot right down there toward the seam. You're going to rethread the needle and then put the needle through the fabric and finish that up. Now I'm going to add a button to this pincushion to show you another variation and to get a nice full and taut kind of pincushion where you don't have loose fabric or have it feeling loose at all. So I'm going to add a button. If you check out my last video on the coffee cozies, I have go a little bit more in depth about adding buttons. You want to just make sure this is a real secure attachment of the buttons using a double length of thread, and I use the hand quilting thread again. Just make sure that's nice and secure and you are done. Okay, so my favorite technique out of all of what I just showed you is actually a combination. So this one is the straight walnut shells pinched with the button. I like this one because you can get it really nice and full. It's really hard, like this one feels a little more beanbag. It's really hard to get this one really full unless you're going to use the polyfill. So my favorite is kind of a mixture of this one. The next time I make one, I'm going to use polyfill and put a little more crushed walnut shells than I did in this one. Crushed walnut shells are really great because they help to sharpen the needles, or so I'm told. They also have some kind of good natural oil still within the crushed walnut shells that are good for the needles, helps not rust or have some of those issues. Polyfill is fine. A lot of pincushions use this to put in their pincushions. I just feel like it's a little lightweight, so I kind of like it to be a little bit heavier, a little denser. The main thing you want to keep in mind is just making sure that you fill it up as taut as you can get it, which is kind of why I like this method as well. This one is just real hard. If you want to do this kind of like wonky pattern or highlight something in the middle where you don't want to stick a button right in the middle, then I would do this with the polyfill and the crushed walnut shells, so you can really stuff it, and then probably hand stitch it closed. I like to machine close them because I feel like it's a little bit more secure, but you can really stuff it, and then still hand stitch it closed. But you couldn't really get it underneath the presser foot on your sewing machine. So I hope this gives you some great ideas, some good gift ideas for the holidays, or just something really fun to spruce up your own sewing room. These are all going to stay in my sewing room. I got some new pins and I wanted to have some nice new pin cushions for them. Don't forget to like this video, thumbs it up, share it, subscribe to this channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!